And when I hear you black folk talking about fam, you back the good old days when the family was the family. When was that? When was the black family the black family? When white folk could just come in the house and lynch any nigga in the family they wanted, and when the damn thing you would do was say, well, thank God they didn't get all of us. Was that the family y'all talking about? The family when you could go to World War II and the same German that your daddy can come to America and live and work where your daddy can't work. That's the black family you talking about. You talking about back when the black family was the black family, when black American soldiers was coming back bringing those Germans to the POW camps, and they'd let them white murdering Germans go into the front of the restaurant and sit down and eat like men, but them niggas had to stand outside and have their food pitched to them. Is that the black family you talking about? Well, God don't never let me go back to them heathens. Never, 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 never. That's the black family. And what white family they talking about? The same white folks that sit around and watch it happen? That's the family? No, you looking at the family now.
Today, as Christians, we pay tithe, we make offerings, but many times we pay tithes and offerings with wrong intentions.
This is Mutabaruka. We want to present to you a wholesome kind of level of consciousness right now. So subscribe and tell your friend them. This is Mutabaruka.
But when you live in a society that is embedded in the Christian mindset, it don't allow for any other thinking to come across. You see, all of the other thinkings them is stupid and irrelevant. So we hear teachers now who's teaching comparative religion in a school kind of want to tell the student them say Hinduism and Buddhism and all this foolishness according to them. It's just some little foolish stories. So what we find now is that even though Christianity, or they would say God allow Christians to live, but the Christians allow the devil to live. Because it is through this doctrine of Christianity why the devil is so prominent in our life. When Christianity introduced the opposite of God, because we must remember that in a Judaism, when something happened to Israel, them never blame it on the devil. Them just say something them do. Why God a punish them? So God punish you and certain things happen to you. There's a judgment that takes place against you by God. The Christians introduce an opposite to God named the devil. So there's this continuous fight between the devil and God for power. So I would really declare that it's really Christianity allow the devil to maintain itself, even though people might say the devil did exist before any Christians. Well, the devil never exists in the Old Testament until Job. It come about in Job, and they don't even know who write Job. But Job is really a very important story. Very important story to the whole idea of the strength of man and the perseverance of man still. But we see this new entity arrive in our psyche. And it has perpetuated itself in our psyche for 2,000 years. There's this devil that is really prevalent in our thinking and in our thoughts, that we even create ideas and concepts of the devil. But the reason why we have said that is for really go down into the idea of this month, December. Why was December chosen to be the birthday? That specific day was chosen to be the birthday of Jesus Christ. We say it many times over and over and over, and we can't say it too much. We can't repeat the same thing too much because we have to keep repeating these things, you know. There's a reason why it was chosen. Now, most Christians and most, I will say no, without any apology, most nowadays preacher who has never really studied theology, but claim that them get this Holy Spirit that is moving them You know, people say the Holy Spirit move you to say things and to do things, when it's really them after them own misunderstanding and guide themselves and claim some supernatural divinity that is directing the course of them thinking. But when we look at most of the preachers them today who preach to the people, I will realize a lot of them don't understand why was certain things chosen to be how it is. Because maybe if we had known why certain things was chosen to be what it is, we would have moved a certain way and would be thinking a different way and have a different perception and perspective about ourselves. And it's not too late, you know, we can't say why it's too late now, but it's not too late, and it's just whosoever is open enough to receive will really appreciate the information. Because when I tell her once, if we just take information and sup it so, like it's true, we say, evaluate the situation, the information, and look and see if what is said make any sense. And if you don't even understand what is said, maybe you should go ask somebody who you feel. Because we see them at theological seminary there. They invite you to the theological seminary a couple times, about 2 times back, and we listen and we hear the people them who is studying to be theologians, who eventually become preachers of divinity in Christianity. And we realize that even though them in the theological college, them don't want to open their mind to different perspective and understanding of different religions. Because theology don't mean Christianity. Theology is the study of the idea and concept of God, no matter what religion it is. Because theo is Greek. It's Greek. Theo, God. You see, so it's really like the study of God in different facets of understanding. But when you live in a society that is embedded in the Christian mindset, it don't allow for any other thinking to come across. You see, all of the other thinkings them is stupid and irrelevant. So we hear teachers now who's teaching comparative religion in a school kind of want to tell the student them say Hinduism and Buddhism and all this foolishness according to them. It's just some little foolish stories. What we must really center our mind on is Jesus Christ. So there's no scope and no opening for the student to understand different perspective or how different people see things outside of their environment. Well, over the years, cutting edge, people cuss way and people say, boy, right now we come down to hard pan Christian them and thing. And I want to tell you, say, I hear Mr. Boy and I come down hard pan the Christian them too. I hear Mr. Boy and I do some internal sweeping. Yes, Mr. Boy, I will love you now, you know. Mr. Boy do some internal sweeping and sweep out himself totally, you know, because I say, the Christian them, more time, them not think. Them have emotions, but them not really think. Them not reason. See, most of the things them with them is just emotion them use to reach a certain idea and understanding instead of reasoning. Because I come like so when a man become Christian, him stop reasoning. Him not reason out things, him not rationalize, and him leave everything to God then, and not knowing say, boy, but the idea of God is inside of him, and the whole purpose of finding God is to find yourself. Not blindly finding yourself, because people don't look for themselves blindly. They say you have to have eye, you have to have a mirror too, you know, to find yourself. So when we hear all young boy and I leak out and I say, well, right now, him find say most of the Christian them in Jamaica, them not really have no rational intellect to really reason and come to a total understanding of what them believe in. So most of the times now you hear say we is the devil, because we come on the radio, without anything in our mouth, and we just talk exactly how we see it and how we view it. And people feel say, well, right now we are some atheists, we are some this and we are some that. And we tell them all the while, say, it's not that we don't believe in a God, it's just that we don't believe in the idea and the concept that was taught to us through the Christian faith. You see, the idea that them have about Yahweh and Elohim and Adonai and everything there, we don't really accept them concept there. Them concept there come through some irrational and sometimes illogical understanding of self that man should really give over. Like Santa Claus, when a woman, as we said last week, a woman spend 360 days at work to get her child a present. And instead that she tell the child that it's fair, she work hard and get the child a present. She put it in her socks and hang it on a tree and give it over to a big belly man named Santa Claus. So this lie perpetuates itself in our youth. Where you don't tell the youth, you don't tell a lie, you know. But the biggest lie is that Santa Claus come and give the little youth a present. So the youth become loving of this big belly man, where every Christmas now you see them put him in a big chair, red and white, go with that. And now you see even black people are dressed up that way there. You see, last week we talked to our brethren about the White Christmas, the song White Christmas, and he couldn't even comprehend the psychology of White Christmas and how White Christmas maintain itself in the idea that white is beautiful, white is pretty and all these things. He couldn't comprehend that. You see, him keep rationalize that the song don't make no mark difference in no one's living and how them live. But it's a collectiveness we are dealing with, and the perpetration of a certain ideology. And it linked the ideology of I'm dreaming of a white Christmas with Santa Claus. All of these things linked together. You see, we're not using it as just one facet or one aspect of the thing. It's a totality, a sum total of a mindset that has been perpetuated on us for years through a European philosophy and ideology that it's very difficult for us to come out of it. Very difficult to come out of it. And a lot of these ideas is maintained through grandmothers and great-grandmothers and grandfathers and great-grandfathers who declare these days now as very corrupt days, when it is because of those teaching perpetuating itself and what we call genetic memory, where the child becomes a person even in the womb of the mother. Even in the womb of the mother, the child is a person. So the child is feeding from the mother. The psychology, as we said last week, one of the ways them pacify the male resistance is to tie the father to what them call it. Yeah, tie up the father between two arms and make the mother, the pregnant woman, watch this cruel, inhuman action where they would put black people, black man, after whipping them 100 lashes, would have sprinkled salt in the wound them and make cat run over them back. This is documented. This is how my Mutabaruka say. Documented. And make the pregnant woman watch. And this develop a certain psychology in the woman where if when her child born, in order not to make her child go through that kind of torture, she teach the child not to fight. She teach the child not to be what you call a revolutionary. So it pacifies the youth. So we can say, oh, the fear is a love fear, you know. The love for the child, but the fear grip the mother so much that the mother don't really want her child to come out to fight against a system that is a cruel and unjust system. So when you start to wake up to this reality now, you become a rebel without a cause because you are now rebelling against something and don't know why you're rebelling against it in a very unstructured way. You find a whole heap of people are rebel in a very unstructured way. You understand? So, why we are saying all of that is to come to the whole idea that it is very important that when we play certain things on the radio, and we don't want a man just look and say Muta is a Rasta. So him not listen. We are saying Muta is a person who will give information. And it depends on where you want to do with the information now. Because I don't listen and I gather and I throw away. Where I don't want, I throw away. Where I want, I hold in my consciousness. So I am just passing this information to you now, and you must know what you want to do with the information. And we are saying, don't bother feel like say boy right now, you can't listen because you done seeping at your thinking already. Because look here man, it's a long road man. Nobody can reach to the top of the mountain. Sometimes the mountain have to come to Muhammad still. And we are saying, knowledge is power. I know we and the Christian them would have get on quite okay if them just keep it in the faith. Yeah, if them just keep it in the faith, it will be so wonderful. Instead of going out there preaching like this thing is physically real and not metaphysically real, you know, it's like these things that they believe in is a belief. It's faith. And I listen to say, yeah, question a man faith, you know. Who is man for question the next man faith, you know, question the faith. If them could have just keep it in the realms of faith.
There was a man named Constantine. I don't know how much people ever hear about him or of which way who watch this thing ever hear about Constantine. Constantine was one of the emperors of Rome. But Fame Empire, the stretch got into Turkey, or a place named Constantinople, where he named after himself, in a place named Istanbul. Istanbul is in Turkey. And for those of you who don't know, Turkey is in two different continents. It is in Asia and it is in Europe. Part of it is in Asia and part of it is in Europe. It was like a crossroad between what was happening in Europe and what was happening in Asia, especially in Jerusalem and so-called Palestine. Well, Constantine is responsible for most of the thinking and thought that come out of Christianity. Because we must understand that Christianity, as it was now, never start in Africa, even though the people them who create the idea is African. But the Europeans carry it to the next level, the unbelievable level that really make the whole world accept it. And when I say the whole world, I mean the whole Western world. And Constantine was the main man. Constantine had an empire that stretched, as we say, from Constantinople way over there. So. And there was a time when him going to decide now how to make Christianity be more palatable to the world. Not like where the so-called Jews them did that talk about, or where the people them in a way. Because what happened was that there was a group of people who was fighting against the Roman Empire, the Greco-Roman Empire. So them create a lot of little war zealots, them call them zealots. And them fight against the Roman Empire with violence. Now, the Romans needed to pacify these people. And the only way them could pacify the people them is to attack them belief system and them culture. And one of the ways that them do it was to use a guy named Saul, otherwise called Paul. Paul was a Roman citizen, and him claims him get a vision when he got to Damascus. And him change. Because even though him used to persecute the so-called followers, him himself get converted. And when you look at the New Testament, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, we really don't know who write them. You know, we really don't know who write them. But we know, say, Constantine, 200 years AD or something like that, him call a conference with bishops to rectify once and for all what is Christianity, what is the character of Jesus and all these things, when Jesus was just a normal man. I don't want to say Jesus because I'm never named Jesus. There was no Jesus in history. There was a man named Yeshua. Yeshua was a Hebrew. And them other and a thing named Christ by him name. Christ is not Yeshua last name. Christ mean anointed. So you have a what you call a historical man and a mythical man. And them combine the two of them, just like a lot of the things them that you believe about Jesus right now was there before Jesus born. All of the religions, the major religions them of the Eastern world, was long before the so-called Jesus born. We talk about Buddhism, Mithraism, Zoroaster, all of them, and the Isis concepts, all of them derived from those places, like 500 years BC. But this one take over because Rome was what we call the Empire of Rome was controlling the Western world. And they sit down and conceive and make laws that govern Christianity and then put it out there as the gospel. And this gospel was to pacify the rebellious Jews them in Palestine, in Israel. And that is how them get for really maintain them power. They maintain them power by causing the people them to be so passive in them thinking and giving up them culture that them now have the strength to fight. And we see this happening right now. We see it happen right now. That the fighters of the African Revolution get pacified most of the time because of religious belief, religious concepts that is coming from this book that most people I tell you say is African people, is black people write it. Black people never have nothing to do with it. More than say, we did live a certain life that was before the book. And these guys take that lifestyle and inject it in a freedom lifestyle. So them fuse Roman, Greco-Roman culture with Jewish culture and make out and become Christians. And that is how Christianity come. Christianity is not here to free you. Christianity is here to pacify you. And the more African people go into this idea and this concept of Christianity, is the more them get pacified into becoming a part of the Greco-Roman Empire. Yeah, this is Mutabaruka. I want to introduce you to a different style of programming on the media.
Today, as Christians, we pay tithe, we make offerings, but many times we pay tithes and offerings with wrong intentions. We think that we are in a casino and that we are investing and God will make us millionaires. And when we don't get the millions, we get disappointed. And we who are here as professionals today, it is a day to interrogate ourselves, to ask ourselves questions wherever we are, whether we can pass the litmus test. Suppose there was to be a rapture today, that Christ were to come today, on the basis of the criteria that is provided in the Bible, would you get to heaven? Ask yourself that question. It is not the number of services that you attend every year. It is not the tithes and offerings that you pay. Would you get to heaven by your very actions? And this is what makes me make reference to the story of the Good Samaritan, recorded in the book of Luke, as I said a little earlier, chapter 10, verses 29 through to 37. And Christ was answering what was essentially a very simple question. Who is your neighbor? That was the question that was posed. And who is your neighbor? It would have been possible for him to say that your neighbor is he or she who lives next to you. But he did not answer in that way. He said, there was a man who was traveling that road, that dangerous road. And he was ambushed by robbers. And when he lay there dying, a Levite passed. Levites, we are latter-day Levites. They did nothing. Another believer passed, did nothing. And then there came a Samaritan. And in order to understand the context of this story, you must understand the status of the Samaritans during the times when Christ walked on the surface of this earth. And this Good Samaritan, we now call him the Good Samaritan, said, he took care of him and went to the inn and said, take care of him. And if there is any additional expense, you tell me. Today, courtesy of his actions, we say he was a good Samaritan. How many of you professionals here have found yourselves in situations where you could have been a good Samaritan, but you are not? How many of you here who are lawyers in government institutions, who when called upon to do that which is good and right, you seek to be bribed first? How many of you here, I'm not asking you to raise your hands, but I'm asking you to inspect your heart. How many of you here who are doctors, upon whom it fell to save life and asked many questions, irrelevant questions, and lives were lost? How many of you here are engineers who compromise the standards and qualities of our roads that you may become rich? How many of you? How many of you who are reporters here who will distort what we are saying today? How many of you? Because when you find yourself in any situation where your acts or omissions can harm another, that other is your neighbor. This is the message. So, as to who is your neighbor changes from time to time, but your conduct must never change. In other words, as professionals, we must make painful choices. You know, many times I listen to fellow Christians, and they say, I love the Lord, and I do not begrudge them. I'm not in the business of begrudging them, because they have their duty and right to love the Lord. But a few minutes later, when they are driving on the road, they do not love the other motorists. And I said, how can they possibly be conducting themselves in a manner that could lead to the death of the other motorists, and then they say they love the Lord? In John 1, you are told that you are a liar if you are such a one as that. And you know, in this country, when we say there is corruption or evil, all these other things, Who are the midwives of corruption in this country? Professionals. We are the midwives. Look at any institution that is collapsing or has collapsed. Who has presided over the collapse of such institutions? Is it not us who are professionals? Do we make the right choices when we are called upon to make the right choices? Whom do we worship? Do we worship Mammon or God? Do we obey the law when it is inconvenient to us? When I read the story of the Israelites as they moved from Egypt through the desert for 40 years to the promised land, and it has been dramatized in modern times. I do not know whether you watch movies. If you do, good. If you don't, I urge you to. And there is one movie which is a dramatization of that event that I want you to watch. And I'm citing this movie so that I may make reference to the verse that I talked about in the book of the prophet Joshua. It is a movie that was produced in 1956. It's called The Ten Commandments. How many have watched it? If you've watched the Ten Commandments, you can understand how weak we are as human beings. For 400 years, the Israelites were praying to God generation after generation to free them from slavery. But once they are freed from slavery, their conduct is completely that of ungrateful individuals. And if you read and watch that movie alongside the Bible, you will know that there are certain things that are extra biblical, but other things that are biblical. But the ones that are biblical are the ones that I want to make reference to. When Moses goes up into the mountain and he leaves Aaron, his brother, and Miriam, the sister, after only a few days, the Israelites say they want a God that they can see. And they make unto themselves an image of a calf. The sons of Korah are there. Dathan is there. And they have persuaded the people to rebel against God. And when he comes down now in the dramatization, he comes down with the tablets of the law, and the people have rebelled. And one of them, I think it is Korah, who says, "You have made unto yourselves laws that you may become a prince over us. We are free." But Moses says, no, there is no freedom outside of the law. Freedom must be within the law. And that is why, therefore, as professionals, we must be bound by certain ethics. We must have certain taboos, the things that we do not do, and the things that we do. And these taboos are the ones that will prevent us from doing things that are not in the best interest of our country and our society. In other words, as professionals, we are enjoined to make choices. But which choices do we make? Today, as Christians, we pay tithe, we make offerings, but many times we pay tithes and offerings with wrong intentions. we think that we are in a casino and that we are investing and God will make us millionaires. And when we don't get the millions, we get disappointed. Choose you now whom you shall serve, is what I'm coming to. But what I want to say before that is, we must change our minds and change our hearts. This morning, I was telling the good president here, and we were reminding ourselves that it's not lost on us that the Bible says that out of the whole group that left Egypt, only 2 entered the promised land. Only 2. Joshua and Caleb. The rest died because they had left Egypt, but there was too much Egypt in them. You can leave Egypt, but Egypt is still in you. So today, we who are professionals here, we must ask ourselves the uncomfortable question. Is Egypt still in us, or we have left Egypt and exorcised the ghost of Egypt? And that is how I understand the famous statement that is recorded in the book of Joshua at chapter 24, verse 15. Because the people were undecided. The people were undecided whether they should worship God or they should worship little gods. And he says, you must now make a choice. You must not be of 2 minds. Choose you now whom you shall serve. You know, when I look at us as Christians, I look at us as professionals, I look at us as a country, I look at the judgments that we make as a country. I ask myself, if it is said of us that in determining who is a Christian, there is no Jew nor Gentile, no slave nor free. Do you remember that? There is no Jew nor Gentile, no slave nor free. But here in a country where we have professionals, one of the greatest diseases is, we call it ethnicity or tribalism. We are one of the most ethnic countries on earth. The blood of ethnicity is thicker than the blood of Christ. So that when you are making your judgments, you don't make judgment on the basis of whether you are Christian, but you make judgment on the basis of whether you are Luo, Kamba, Luhya, or Kalenjin. But when you get to the Kalenjin, it becomes Nandi, Kipsigis. Because when you begin to look for the things that divide you, you'll find them. I was asking somebody the other day, when we are putting people into positions as Christians, because we claim we are Christian. When you are boarding an aircraft and you are Luo, do you ever ask, is the pilot Luo? You don't. What you want is a good pilot that will make the thing fly and land. But when we want to appoint a minister, we say, is the minister Kamba? What contradiction do we have as a nation? When you want to catch a rat, what you need is a cat. Whether the cat is black or white is irrelevant. You want a rat-catching cat. But do we as professionals, have we liberated ourselves from that? Professionals. Today, if you look at universities across our country, if you go to Maseno, I dare challenge you. the vice chancellor is likely Luo. And if he is not, the Luos in that area will say, we want our own. Does chemistry change when it's taught by a Kamba and when it's taught by Luo? If you go to Moi University, likely the vice chancellor is of the Kalenjin extraction. If you go to Seuko in Machakos, the vice chancellor is likely a Kamba. If you go to Masinda Muliro, the vice chancellor is likely a Luhia of the Bukusu extraction. If you go to Rongo, the vice chancellor is likely to be a Luo. If you go to Dedan Kimathi University, that one may be a little different. But if you go to any of these, and the people will say, we want our own. And these people who say these are Christians, for whom there is no Jew nor. How do we reconcile that kind of conduct? When you want to have the head of the Moi teaching and referral, you want a Kalenjin, but when you are dying, you want an oncologist. How do you reconcile that? We must make a choice. But we are not making those choices as Christians who are Kenyans, because we want to be nice to each other. Until the day that we are capable of liberating ourselves from these basic instincts, our countries will never realize their potential. And I'm urging you that we as the Christian body, we must now ask ourselves uncomfortable questions in order to give meaning to our Christianity. You know, I now know churches, and there is a very good friend of mine who is an archbishop of the Catholic Church. For the moment, the Catholic Church is doing a very good job. They appoint them differently. But I know a church which I will not name, because you may recognize it. And I want to be politically correct, in which you cannot be a bishop unless you are an aborigine of that area. We have now put Christ and God into ethnic pigeonholes. And it is we professionals who preside over that. If you go to different parts of Kenya, you are in West Pokot, you are in Elgeyo Marakwet, you are in different parts in Kisii. The people who are not professionals never talk about these things. It is we professionals who remind them about their ethnicity, which ought to be celebrated. Ethnic diversity is something to be celebrated. It is the use of ethnicity as an instrument of judgment and discrimination that must be condemned. There is nothing wrong with our ethnicity. God, in his divine wisdom, made us different because he is a God of diversity, because diversity is what creates harmony. But if we choose to use our diversity to destroy the harmony that we have, then we can never realize our potential. You professionals who are here, I want you to reflect. There was a time in this country, and many of you will remember, when you left the comfort of your home in Kirinyaga and you are a student in Shimolatewa in Mombasa. There was a time in this country when you left the comfort of your home in Karatina and you are a student in Maseno. There was a time in this country when you left the comfort of your home in Machakos and you are a student at Cardinal Otunga High School in Kisii. Today, we have created a situation where you start primary school. I believe there is a primary school of Moi University. Then you go to that primary school. Then you go to a secondary school in the neighborhood. Then you go to the university in that neighborhood. Then you are employed in Uasin Gishu. In your world, the world is only about Uasin Gishu. You are not exposed. Even when you claim to be a Christian professional, you are not exposed. We were told here about the journey of Christianity, the journey of Paul, the journey of movement from the promised land into Malta, into different parts of the world. That is why we have Christianity here, because people thought widely. But the current professional is a professional whose worldview is very narrow, and he or she claims that they are Christians. Do you sometimes wonder why, therefore, we pray and fast and the things that we ought to get, we don't get? Because praying and fasting without belief is superstition. Ni ushirikina tu. That is how I then want to make reference to the book of Matthew. Matthew chapter 25, verses 14 through to 30. You remember the story of that great man, if he was great in his days. The Bible records that there was this great man, a rich man, who was going away for some time. And then what he did was to give to his workers according to their ability. One he gave 5 talents, another one he gave 2 talents, and another one he gave 1 talent. Do you remember that story? And do you remember that when he had gone out for a long time, he came back, and to the one that he had given 5 talents, he told him, Master, you gave me 5 talents, I've worked the 5, and here are my 5. Therefore there were 10. And to the one that he gave 2, he said, Master, I've worked the 2, and they are now 4. And he said, good worker. And to the one that he gave 1, he said, I know you. You are in the business of reaping where you have not sown, not his words, but my words, but making the point. And then the Bible records and says, and to those who do not have, even the little they have shall be taken away from them, and it shall be given to those who have. As professionals, how do we use our professionalism to multiply what we have for the general good? Today in Kenya, and I'll say this, we have something called devolution, and we love it. How many of you here love devolution? None of you love devolution. It is a good thing. A few good things have happened, but a few bad things have happened. Professionals of different kinds are serving in our devolved units. Lawyers, doctors, economists. And these professionals attend church on Saturdays and on Sundays. But I've never seen any pastor, not even in your church, not any one of them, rebuke the thieves who have been devolved. Not one. You accept their tithe and offering gleefully. And you say all wealth belongs to God, even the stolen ones. Yet Christ rebuked taxpayers. So even the clergy have fallen short of the glory of the expectation of both God and man. Because we do not rebuke. There are thieves here, many of them. Do not rebuke. There are thieves here, many of them, who have been devolved. Some of them are still at the center. And the thieves that are devolved, who are Christians, there are two things that they love doing. They build hotels. I do not know why hotels are very popular with thieves. Or office blocks. And then they invite pastors to bless them. And pastors say, this block was blessed by Pastor so and so of this church. Have you seen such buildings? Even here in Eldred, they are there. I've seen them across the country, and I'm saying this because if we don't rebuke, then the professionals cannot change. Have you seen? Even in churches, when thieving professionals arrive in church, when a sermon is going on, the pastor will stop. In the middle of a sermon, I've seen this. They go and bring the thief and bring him in front. Then the professionals cannot change because they are not rebuked. So all of us who are here, who are professionals, let us remember that when all is said and done, it is you and your God. You know, when 2 days ago I read the report by the ESCC telling us how corruption has become pervasive. In order to get a job in Kenya, the average amount of money you spend is 163,000 Kenya shillings. Only one clergy, to my knowledge, has spoken about it and against it, Archbishop Muheria. None of the clergy. Thank you. He will not succeed. You know, I say this with pain because it is we who are professionals who can change this. But are we willing to change? Are we willing in our own small ways to change? Because you cannot possibly change everybody, but you can change yourself. Kwa Kiswahili wanasema jishinde ushinde. Jishinde ushinde. Are we ready? You lawyers who are here, who are professionals, you judicial officers who are here, who are professionals, are we ready to ensure that justice according to law is done on the basis of evidence rather than on the basis of the size of our pockets? Are we prepared? You doctors who are here, who are in a public hospital and prescribe medicine which is bought at your pharmacy across the road, are you prepared to change? Because we know. You police officers who are running matatus and boda bodas, whom you allow to break the law. Are you prepared to change? That we may reduce the accidents on our roads, are we prepared? You teachers who leak examination to your students and then celebrate with twigs at the end of the year when they pass, are you prepared to change? Are we? You town planners who are approving buildings which collapse and kill, that you may become a millionaire, are you prepared to change? You journalists who kill good stories because a brown envelope has been given to you, are you prepared to change? These are the painful questions that this country must ask. You politicians who are also professionals in your own right and run CDF, and you've incorporated 10 companies in which your drivers are the directors, trading with yourself. Are you prepared to change? You MCAs who are now political professionals, who are crying for the ward fund because you have companies which you have incorporated. Are you prepared to change? Are you prepared to be Christians? As a friend of mine, you remember the conversation I started with, we concluded by saying that kuna Wakristo wa aina mbili. Wakristo uchwara na Wakristo halisi. Sasa jiulize wewe hii leo, wewe ni Mkristo uchwara au ni Kristo halisi? Kwa kuwa kuna Ukristo uchwara tu, unakariri Biblia toka mwanzo hadi mwisho. Hata Ibilisi si anakariri Biblia, anakariri vizuri tu. Kwa hivyo kukariri Biblia si Ukristo. Ukristo ni vitendo.
Look into that graph. Look at that graph and find out how religious are those countries that are producing millionaires. I mean, we have more churches in Africa than we have industries. On every corner, there is a church. Like in some parts in Nigeria, in one building, you find 15, 20 churches. Ground floor, second floor, third floor, right up to the top. And some are coming at 9, some are coming at 11, some are coming at 2. Some at 10 in the evening. All of them are just praying and praying and praying. Hey, African people, stop praying too much. Start working. God does not say, I will bless your prayers. He said, I will bless the labor of your hands, and by your sweat you shall eat, not through your prayers. So we cannot substitute our hard work with prayerful lives. Prayer will leave you in poverty. Hear me well. Prayer will leave you in poverty. So we need to learn how to work. Look into that graph and find out these countries that are producing millionaires. What religion are these people believing in? Maybe we need to change the gods that Africa has accepted to deal with these ones here that seem to be economically viable and progressive in terms of helping their own members. Can't be spending your whole day at church. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesdays, choir, Friday, youth day, Thursday, women's day. What it is practice, then it's practice, then it is all these old age things. The whole week you are in church. When are you going to sit down and start making money? So we need to find out from these countries again what is the recipe of their success. And having discussed that in terms of their labor, we also need to find out what kind of tax facilities that they have in terms of the tax havens. How are they treating their investments? How did they structure their financial systems? You can also find out in those countries that are producing the most millionaires. Find out for me, of all these countries, how many of them have foreign investors in their country. Find out how many of these countries on the top 15, top 20 that have millionaires, how many of them are working with foreign investments? How many of them are working with donor money? You may be shocked that they don't work with donor money. They don't work with foreign investments. And while you're asking that question, ask again these countries that have more millionaires. Who owns their banks? Who owns their banks? Who owns their insurance companies? These countries, who owns their insurance company? And while you're trying to answer that question, answer this one also. Who owns their land? Who owns their land? Because land is a means of accessing finances. So you walk up to the top 20 country companies and find out who owns their banks, who owns their insurance, and who owns their land, who owns their industry. And you, just when you thought you had it all, find out what kind of raw materials have they built their industries on. Are these locally produced? Find out again, are these locally produced goods? Are these locally produced raw materials? Where are they getting their raw materials from? And at what cost are those raw materials? And when you have answered that, find out again, are these countries democratic? They have the top 20 that are making the most millionaires. Are these countries democratic? When last did you hear of elections in Sweden? When last did you hear of elections in Switzerland? When last did you hear of elections in Hong Kong? When last did you hear of elections in Singapore? When last did you hear of elections in Denmark? While we as Africans are busy getting confused about these elections, 5 years, find out from these countries, are they democratic? And after answering the democracy question, find out if they conduct elections. And when last did they have elections, including Britain? When last did you hear of elections in Britain? And having answered that, you also want to find out not only about elections, but ask these countries again, how many political parties do they have? These countries that have the most millionaires, how many political parties do they have? How many political parties do they have? You will find that in Zimbabwe alone, when we're heading for elections here, 150 political parties, with every one of them wanting to be a president. So we want to find out what politics, what kind of politics are these countries playing with, so that maybe we can learn a lesson or two also of how to adjust our political system to produce these millionaires that we are hearing and we are reading about here. Are these countries democratic? Do they run elections? How many political parties do they have? And not only that, you also want to find out what culture do these people adhere to that are making the most millionaires? What kind of culture are they built upon? Are they supporting? What kind of ethics and moral ethics? What are their functions? What their science? What is the science of their success in terms of their spirituality? And you also want to find out how they've been able to manipulate their economies to create these millionaires. And what must our students in Africa learn after studying what other countries are doing to create millionaires? So yes, there you have it. You have Switzerland on top of the list. You have Hong Kong, you have Kuwait, you have Australia, then you have USA, New Zealand, Netherlands, Denmark, Canada, Sweden, Belgium, Spain, France, UK, Ireland. And then at the bottom of the food chain, then you have Cambodia, you have Turkey, you have South Africa, Indonesia, Brazil, India, Russia, Mexico, as you are going further up the list. So maybe in terms of our curriculum, I conclude, we need to study this information from the cradle to our universities. Not only to study for the sake of historical study, we need to study the science of creating sustainable communities. And I bet you my bottom dollar, all the questions that I'm asking you on the top side. How must we teach our children? How did they make their money? What systems and industries did they build to create such millionaires? What is their value chain? and how and who owns it? How does it function and who owns it? What raw materials are they being used to build these wealth bases? Who owns their banks? Who deposits in them? What tax laws have they used to secure such economy from foreign funds? Are they democratic? When last did they conduct their elections? How many political parties are in these countries? What is their curriculum? And what do they teach their children? What is their relationship to their culture as it also relates to their wealth creation? How can we also learn to manipulate our systems to create such? How much learning do we need to understand that you can never trust your economy in the hands of other people and think that it will be sustainable and you can produce self-sustainable people and create millionaires? It must be part of the curriculum in our universities, in our high schools, in our primary schools, in our cradle roll and crash, how to become a millionaire. We must not be afraid of teaching our children how to make money. And I think if we can go back and do a thorough research on these economies, we can be able to come up with a curriculum of study which our children can get into to be able to reach these same heights of excellence. There's no excuse, Africa. We have the schools, but we don't have the education. We have the teachers, but we don't have the knowledge. We have the raw materials, but we don't have the technology. We have the politics, but we don't have the economics. We have the people, but we don't have the brains. And what we don't have seems to outweigh what we have. Africa is not poor. It's the people who are poor. Continent is rich, but the people on the continent are poor. And they are poor not because of what is underneath their ground. They are poor because of what is between their ears and what is between the ears of their own leaders. Therefore, we go to study such information so that we can come to ourselves, call the Department of Education and say, transform this bush Bantu education, translate it into this which can develop children for the future. We need to go back to our economic books and burn them. MP3 squared, what stupid little formulas of the Western world, and come around and say, how do we write our own economic books that speak to our resources and transform our society?